So you'll of course remember what happened May 24th on Capitol Hill in Cal Anderson Park when peaceful worshipers tried to hold a music rally. And of course, Antifa did and the far left did what they've always done. And they disrupted it. They threw urine-filled balloons at the crowd. They tried to stop the worship rally from happening. They assaulted police officers. And there were 23 arrests. But at this point, we followed up with the prosecutor's office today. So it's been May, June, July, August, 3 months since this happened. 23 arrests, and we have not heard of a single case proceeding forward. In fact, I got a tip from a well-placed law enforcement source that not a single person arrested in that May 24th siege on peaceful Christians has been charged officially. And again, we reached out to the King County Prosecutor's Office and we reached out to the Seattle City Attorney's Office to confirm whether that's true. But it wouldn't surprise me because these people can get away with literally anything because they blamed the Christians for it. They blamed the peaceful Christians for it. The mayor did, all these LGBTQ groups or whatever it is, their presence was triggering to the far left. And so it's their fault for being there, exercising their First Amendment rights and worshiping. So that happened, and there's another one on Sunday. So this is being held by a pastor named Sean Foyt, and we've talked about it in the lead up to it. We're not going to be here on Sunday, but we're going to be tracking it closely. So this one is called Revive in 25. And originally, as you know, it was slated to be held Sunday at 5 p.m. at Cal Anderson Park. So there was a part of me that's like, oh gosh, can you choose another park? But also they want to be in an area of the city that they think could use their message the most. And so in their opinion, that's Cal Anderson Park. And so they decided to do that. And immediately Antifa came out and said that they were going to have a sleepover at the park. So maybe go right from their flag burning, have a sleepover at Cal Anderson Park, calling it anti-fascist slumber party and potluck, saying another hate pastor is planning on coming to the heart of the queer community in Seattle to spew anti-queer and trans rhetoric. So we're having a potluck the day before, followed by a sleepover, so we can greet the fascists bright and early. So that was the setup about a month ago when this event was announced. And ever since then, some community groups had been pushing for the city to force the rally or the Christian worship event to move. They said they can't be here in the heart of our gay neighborhood, etc. And thankfully, the mayor came out and said we can't just move them. I don't know if they've learned a lesson or their lawyers advised them like, hey, you really handled the May 24th event poorly, so we need to handle this one better. And a couple days ago, the mayor's office and City Councilwoman Joy Hollingsworth put out a joint statement, and they basically said, well, I'll just read it. According to the law, the city cannot deny or unilaterally relocate permits for public spaces based on the content of the speech or the impacts of that speech on the community. Recognizing that Cal Anderson Park is an important gathering space for our LGBTQ plus residents and receiving their feedback on the event location, we worked with the organizers to suggest alternative park locations. After that conversation, the organizers have agreed to move their event to Gasworks Park. We're grateful that they were receptive to our recommendation. Everyone has a First Amendment right to make their voices heard, regardless of content or belief. We're focused on facilitating that right of expression for everyone in our city while also prioritizing safety. What I think is so interesting, and not that this potential flag burning is going to be some mass event. It was originally shared on Reddit, but it's like, the mayor's office and the city council and the police, they're not concerned about Antifa gathering in mass to burn American flags. They don't want to work with Antifa to move that event, but they've got to work with the Christians to move their event. It just speaks to everything that's wrong with the city of Seattle. And it's not the Christians that are going to be violent. It's not the Christians that are going to cause a problem. It's people who are so triggered by speech they disagree with that their automatic move is to assault people and hurt people and try to disrupt and stop the ability of other people to share their opinions and their deeply held beliefs. It's really disgusting. Although I will say, much better response in advance of this event from the mayor in the city of Seattle than we saw back in May. Now, we'll see if after the event, if it turns violent and Antifa attacks the Christians, as I'm sure they will, if the mayor stands behind the peaceful worshipers instead of the violent extremists. But I'm happy that they're at least acknowledging, yeah, they have a First Amendment right. We can't just move them, but we worked with them and they agreed to move to Gasworks Park. So The Revive in 25 will still be held this Sunday in Seattle instead of Cal Anderson Park. It's going to be at Gasworks Park, so I guess all those Capitol Hill extremists will at least have to hop a bus to be able to carry out their domestic terrorism. And look, I am hoping that everything is fine. I really am. I am not confident in that, though. I mean, we saw what happened the first time. Antifa does what Antifa does because they get away with it. And there's been no real consequences for the people who showed up to disrupt the Christian rally in May. So what does that tell them? It tells them it's okay. They've gotten away with horrific things over the past 10 to 15 years, and they have no reason to believe that if they disrupt these Christians this time, that it'll be any different. They're totally emboldened. The mayor was on their side last time. You know who else is on their side? The media. This story from King 5 this morning, it doesn't surprise me. We really ought to have a segment that's King 5 News is trash, not just the... Although, you know, sometimes King 5 has the occasional story that really surprises me. But they put out this headline ahead of Sunday's event. LGBTQ plus leaders oppose Seattle worship event, claim it's bigotry in disguise. They call it malicious harassment and incitement. So praying and worshiping, in the eyes of these radical activists, is bigotry in disguise. So being religious means you're a bigot, apparently now. And it's malicious harassment, which is a crime, by the way, and incitement to violence. So they say in advance of the event even happening that the worshipers are going to be guilty of crimes for malicious harassment and incitement. And this is the narrative that King 5 News pushes out there to all their Seattle viewers and readers. And they don't think that it doesn't even have like the other perspective on it. And it doesn't even take into consideration that the last time this happened, the Christians were totally peaceful. They didn't harass anyone. They didn't incite anyone to violence. They were standing there singing. Are we really so weak? Are these people really so weak? And the answer is yes, that they can't be confronted with anything that challenges anything about their lives. Whether it's, you know, people who are religious pushing for traditional marriage, speaking out against the transing of children, both of which, frankly, are fairly consistent, common beliefs among a variety of religions. Do you think that they'd react this way if Muslims were gathering for a worship event, who have often much more strict, extreme, quote-unquote, views on gay people and transgender people than modern-day American Christians? No, they wouldn't do it if it was Muslims. They wouldn't do it if it was Hispanic Catholics. No, it's just because they're white. So if you're white and religious, you're a radical Christian nationalist bigot. It's just so insane. And the media fuels it and politicians fuel it. So something insane happened in the lead up to this event that I just have to tell you guys about, because I know you're really invested in this particular person and their story. So in that King 5 News story, it talks about, you know, the LGBTQ community and leaders are opposing this event on Sunday. So one of the entities, I guess, that is a prominent voice in the LGBTQ community in Seattle is Seattle's LGBTQ plus Commission. So one of these worthless government things that doesn't need to exist. It's like they get together and talk about, you know, ways they can support the gay community. I think that would be perfectly fine if it was a private organization. I just don't think that the government needs to be facilitating it, but they do. So there's appointees on there. Some are appointed by the mayor, some are appointed by commission members, etc. So they had a meeting, and the public is allowed to come and comment at these meetings. So guess who went? Our friend Ari. So remember Ari, and I think we have a picture of the before and after, if you could pull it up. So remember Ari? Ari came on our show, detransitioner, biological man, ended up transitioning at a pretty young age, went through some life-changing surgeries, only to realize, like, oh, I was just a gay man, and I was led, you know, sold this lie. I've changed my body permanently for life. It'll never be the same. And so Ari started speaking out a few months ago when Riley Gaines came to Seattle. And now Ari has become this very vocal detransitioner against radical gender ideology being pushed on kids. And we had Ari on our show. Ari has now gotten involved politically. So Ari decides to go with someone who will be another familiar face. So Justine Detterling, we had on this show. Justine is a lesbian, married to a woman, but is totally over the radical alphabet mob. And Justine's kind of an older lesbian, so kind of old school, like actually had to fight for their rights and all of these things. And she sees all of the gains slipping away because of how radical the alphabet mob has become. So Justine and Ari go to the Seattle LGBTQ Commission together to offer public testimony. And they are talking to the commission about this event that's coming up on Sunday. And what they wanted to share a couple things with the commission. I have some clips. This is insane, guys. So they wanted to say basically that they weren't happy with how the commission responded to the May 24th event. Because the commission came out and issued this statement about, this group was so hateful. So they were basically supporting the violence against Christians. So Justine and Ari go, and they want to tell the commission, like, look, people have free speech rights. You shouldn't be condoning violence. And because we've spoken out against aspects of radical gender ideology, we've been doxxed and harassed and had death threats. So that's the message that they came to share with the commission is, hey, let's lower the temperature here. Here's a clip of Justine's remarks.
My name's Justine. I'm in a lesbian marriage. I'm pretty immersed in LGBTQ identity politics and activism and what's going on with all of those issues. And I'd like to offer a different perspective than what's usually talked about in committees like this, or maybe even in bubbles in Seattle. More and more of the public is rejecting queer activism. And it's not just the general public, it's also people of the identities that this committee says that they represent. And I don't know if you're aware of this. I know how social circles work, and they tend to be bubbles. But there's increasing rejection of what queer activism has become. And one example that I'll use of why is what happened at the Cal Anderson Park. Now, I strongly dislike right-wing Christian ideology. I've been opposing it my whole life. But parks are places where the public is allowed to gather. And by all accounts that I read, it was the queer activists who started the violence. Now, nobody would know that based on the public statements that you all made. So I find that unethical. There was no condemnation of the behavior of the activists that I heard from this committee. I don't think police officers deserve to be assaulted because Matt Shea is a homophobe. And this is happening again in Gasworks Park. This is going to be a repeat. And I promise you, if all of this goes down the same way, you're going to popularize the Christian groups, just like they were popularized and empowered the last time. It's also important to understand, even if Matt Shea shows up, not all of those Christians are homophobes. Not all the local, even conservative Christians are homophobes that show up to events like that. They might not even know that Matt Shea was kicked out of the Republican Party or that he showed up at the Bundy Ranch. They probably don't even know that. They don't necessarily deserve to be kicked or have balloons thrown at them when they don't know if it's urine or gasoline in those balloons, right? So I would like to see a call for protecting the Constitution and the First Amendment and more effective strategies to counter messages that you don't like, even if they're fascistic and dangerous.
So, okay. Oh, this is going to get crazy. So good for Justine, right? As a lesbian woman showing up to the LGBTQ Commission, basically saying, like, how can you guys take the side of these people who show up and beat police officers and kick police officers and throw urine at peaceful worshipers? It's a public park. They have First Amendment rights. And her whole remarks were that tone, that temperament, trying to lower the temperature and say, hey, let's not, as a commission that speaks for the Seattle LGBTQ community, let's not support violent extremists, okay? Let's just counter speech we don't like with speech we do like. And she expresses frustration as like I said, an old school lesbian about what this radical alphabet mob is doing to support for gay people in this country. So she speaks, and then Ari speaks. And Ari had a few things to say, but ever since Ari spoke out as a detransitioner at the Riley Gaines event at the University of Washington, Ari has been doxxed to an insane extent, does not feel safe in his home, has to like protect himself, all this crazy stuff. So Ari first starts by telling this commission something they've probably never heard. They've probably never had a detransitioner come in and speak about the damage that surgical interventions have done to them.
I ended up deciding that this was not the right choice. That 17 years ago, when I was a teenager, homeless on the streets with a diagnosis of complex PTSD from 8 years of childhood sexual assault, that the doctors made a mistake in diagnosing me as dysphoric for no reason other than trans. Like, it was caused by the trauma. So I started just venting about how I felt online, and the trans community doxed me. And they targeted me again. I went public at the Riley Gaines event, just stood outside the event with a sign about protecting women, and my address was posted under every single news article about me, all of which called me a right-wing fascist and a Christian nationalist. I'm not a Christian nationalist. I'm a gay man who was castrated and misdiagnosed, and then was vilified and smeared out of the city, and now lives with my address being the most doxed address. I'm the most doxed detransitioner in Washington state. I get like 10 death threats a day from queer activists in this state, all because I decided it wasn't for me.
Yeah, so that's the reality that Ari is living in after deciding to speak out at the Riley Gaines event, on this show. Now, all of a sudden, someone who's went through this actually has the experience, and this is their lived experience. I thought the left loves it, right? Lived experience of, I transitioned, and it was a mistake, and I want to be able to tell people about that. So Ari went on, and this apparently was the mistake. Ari went on to talk about the extent he's had to go to protect himself from these threats from the alphabet mob.
I have to sleep at night with a gun. My husband sleeps at night with a gun. And I can't go out without a firearm for safety. I get death threats every single day.
So that concluded their public testimony. The commission in the room, and I listened to the whole recording, thanks them for being there, right? They get up to leave, thinking, okay, we've just said our piece. We want to lower the temperature. A commission member called the cops on them. Called City Hall security, saying that Ari claimed to have a gun and that they were fearful for their lives. Here's the interaction when the security guard came up to confront Ari outside.
Part of the virtual part of this meeting,
and they said
that someone did public comment and admitted to being open carrying.
No, I said that I can't go out safely alone without concealed carrying, which I'm licensed to do, but I'm not doing so right now.
Okay.
And I did not say that I was either.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm.
Yeah, no, if someone heard that, that's not what I said, and I recorded what I said. I was not carrying in there,
cool.
And I'm not carrying right now.
All right, cool. That's all I wanted to know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm glad that security guard handled it. Like, okay, that's great. And Ari was so calm. And it gets worse. But think about this. You have Justine and Ari who show up to give public comment on threats and fear and intimidation and the horrible treatment that they've endured for speaking out against, radical gender ideology. And the second they leave, one of these schmucks calls security saying, oh, they claim to be open carrying in a meeting, which just isn't even what Ari said. It's wild. So that happens. And to add insult to injury, the LGBTQ+ Commission puts out an official statement about it, vilifying Ari and Justine as hateful bigots. Oh my gosh, I can't even handle this. So it says, yesterday, individuals attended the Seattle LGBTQ Commission's public meeting and made intimidating comments that suggested a potential safety threat. Did anything in there sound intimidating or a threat in any way? They say intimidation against anyone, including members and allies of our community, is unacceptable and goes against our city's values of safety and inclusion. Hate has no place in Seattle, particularly in spaces meant for community members to foster belonging and volunteer in public service. These two were literally going there to talk about wanting to fight back against hate and fear and intimidation, and they were accused of hate and fear and intimidation. I mean, could anything prove the point they were making in their public testimony better than this? It says, in response to concerns voiced to the city's security teams, an officer made contact with an individual that alluded to being armed. While the officer was able to confirm the individual was not armed, we understand the public comments and behavior were harmful and alarming to all present. The Office for Civil Rights is exploring all options to partner with internal and external stakeholders to find ways to increase safety going forward. Oh my gosh. How triggered. And this is the whole point. You can't speak out against anything because then you're a threat. And what did the LGBTQ activists accuse these Sunday churchgoers of being? They said that it's malicious harassment and incitement just to have a prayer rally. So that's what they're basically painting Justine and Ari as, is the malicious harassment and incitement. It says, the city of Seattle is firmly committed to being a welcoming city where everyone, regardless of their identity, can feel safe and live openly with dignity and respect. Apparently not. Because Ari came there to tell you, as a detransitioner, he does not feel safe. He's harassed and doxxed and threatened and has to sleep with a gun and carry a gun out in the community. And you're turning it around as if Ari is the one who's the threat and danger, not the radical extremists who, and by the way, and I know which one of these commission members called the cops. I know, I can't say it because I can't prove it, but I know which one. There was one of these commission members who interjected when Justine was speaking and talked about how the radical alphabet mob were the ones who started violence on May 24th at the Cal Anderson Park. And Andrew, one of these commission members, said, oh, that's not true. I was there. Oh, okay. So not only are you defending the radical extremists, you're one of them. So no wonder you're defending them. And that same person, Andrew Ashiofu, who was appointed to the commission in May of 2024, I think took this into defamation territory, took to his or her, I don't know, they, them, whatever, personal Facebook and said, during the Seattle LGBTQ Commission at City Hall this week, we encountered community members making hate-filled comments. They targeted our trans community members and activists with hostile language, calling us villains and violent. Is that not crazy? So you heard the bulk of their testimony. I didn't cherry pick comments or selectively edit it. That's the tone they took the whole time. And this LGBTQ commission accuses them of making hate-filled comments, targeting the trans community and activists with hostile language, calling us villains and violent. They literally shared their experience of stuff that is actually happening to them. And instead of being welcoming and inclusive, you called the cops on them and then released statements accusing them of being bigots, thus proving the point of why they showed up to your stupid little meeting in the first place. All they wanted was for the LGBTQ Commission to help them lower the temperature, stop the hate and threats and doxing and vitriol, stop the groups that are showing up, assaulting peaceful worshipers and cops. And no, it was Ari and Justine that were the problem. Isn't that outrageous? It's just crazy. And I've reached out to the LGBTQ Commission, which again is run through the city of Seattle. The comments made by this Andrew Ashiofu, member of the commission, are defamatory. Absolutely defamatory. The statement put out by the director of the Seattle Office for Civil Rights is defamatory. They're targeting private citizens who showed up to just express their concern and their lived experience. But since it's not the lived experience that these extremists agree with, it's hate and bigotry. Honestly, I think Justine and Ari have grounds to pursue some sort of legal claim against the city over all this. They probably won't, but it's just outrageous. So I do not have high hopes for Sunday. I hope everyone can stay safe and peaceful. But given the fact that the whole system in Seattle supports that kind of behavior is a good indicator of what's probably going to happen.